Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life that feels good, because after all, that's what we want. We want to feel good. I'm your host and coach, Fletcher Ellingson, and today we're having an important conversation. It's one that touches all of us at some point in life, yet often gets pushed aside, misunderstood, or sometimes we feel like we have to carry it all alone. Today, we're talking about grief. Yeah, that grief that comes with losing someone we love, but also the quieter kinds, the invisible kinds, the grief that may occur with some types of change, for instance, the grief that one might endure with the loss of identity or the letting go of the life we thought we'd have. And to help us better understand this topic, I'm delighted to have on the show Amy Ellingson, who has years of medical experience and is sure to bring some valuable perspective. You know, many people, including therapists and poets, would say that grief is a form of love. Grief is what love looks like when someone or something we cherish is no longer physically present. It's said to be love with nowhere to go, like an echo of connection, the ache of meaning, and the proof that something mattered, and it mattered very deeply. While preparing for this episode, I came across a quote that struck me, and I want to share it with you. Author Jamie Anderson wrote the following: "Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers in the corner of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and in that hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go." You know, this perspective doesn't erase the pain, but it can transform how we hold it. And instead of treating grief as a flaw or a weakness, we can begin to see it as evidence of deep capacity to feel, to care, to be changed by connection. Whether you're in the midst of grief yourself or supporting someone who is, I hope this conversation offers you some comfort, clarity, and connection. Stick around. We're going to be right back after this message. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. So glad you're here, so glad you're in this conversation. We're talking with Amy Ellingson today. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to have you back, as always.
Yes, good to be here.
Yeah. Hey, we're talking about grief today, but before we get into that, we always got to start off with some wins, as you know. So
Yes.
Lay it on me. What are some things that are going well in your life recently?
Well, we're having our youngest graduate from high school in about a week, which is really exciting and fun. And she's off to state track in Yakima to throw shot put, and she has a good chance of winning state for 2B, so that's been really fun.
Yeah, definitely.
College daughter home, which is lovely. On a personal note, I've been doing hard workout routine for the last 5 weeks, doing like a foundational training for women. I've been really consistent. That's been feeling good. Mm-hmm. Love the springtime, all the flowers.
Mm-hmm. And you've been getting stronger, haven't you?
Yeah.
It's fun to experience that, especially at this age in our life.
Right. Enjoying seeing our granddaughter who's down here in Wenatchee. All the developmental milestones are really fun.
Yeah, getting ready to walk pretty soon.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, gosh, I could say all of that you just said. And as you know, I love early morning sun. I love longer days. So today, like getting up early, going outside, longer evenings, hanging out outside again. I love outdoors, so I love these long days. Yeah. And same thing for me too. Exercise, health, that's going well. I think the win is consistency.
Yeah. The win is the commitment, sticking to the commitment.
Yeah, exactly. Because that can go up and down, but on a very good streak.
Great.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, let's talk about some grief, because a lot of people deal with it.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that in your practice, you have clients or have patients that are dealing with it. How does that show up in people's lives, emotionally and or physically?
Yeah, I think, I mean, grief, I think is, and maybe it's underestimated by people, like the impact it has on you. I think it feels surprising to people to not be in control of their ability to eat, their ability to sleep, their ability to maintain composure, to not be crying. I mean, so it's a very powerful force that we oftentimes don't have much say in how it goes through us. And so I would say, the way that it shows up acutely is usually people reach out. That's usually when people are reaching out, often is either in the acute phase, or if it doesn't get better in a normal kind of amount of time or start getting better. Acutely, people can't eat, can't sleep, can't turn their minds off, can't cope.
Yeah. When you just said, one of the words, descriptors you used, I thought that was really accurate. You said, I think it can be surprising to people. Like it's surprising to have these emotions kind of, they feel like almost like they descend upon us, or maybe are welling up in us, or maybe a combination of both. But it's surprising to not have control over that area of your life. And so it can feel a bit out of control.
Yeah, and I mean, my stepfather just passed away in February, as you know, very suddenly. So we're navigating that with my mom, and it's for people who are normally obviously productive and happy, and to be crying multiple times a day is surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we talk about grief, we commonly think, oh, the loss of a loved one, but people can experience grief in with other types of losses. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, and so people will have grief with any big change or big transition. You can have grief, and I think even in some of the studies that have shown that people that have had bypass surgery then can have depression. I think part of that is grieving, because you're grieving, or people that have a cancer diagnosis, you're grieving the life that you knew, you're grieving the body that you knew, or say someone loses a job, you're grieving any kind of loss, which oftentimes accompanies a big transition in life, can trigger those same feelings, and even going through the same stages of grieving. So and I was going to talk about that later, but the stages that came out in 1969 on the book that came out was called On Death and Dying, and that was when the first time these stages of grieving were put forth, right? And they're denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. So you can think about, say you lose your job or something. It might be you're in denial at first, right? This can't be happening.
Right.
And then you get angry, and then you're well, maybe something can happen, you're bargaining.
Yeah.
And then you're just sad. And then eventually you accept it, right?
Yeah. So
and you may not, it may not be linear in that fashion, but frequently people go through all of those things with a big breakup, multiple things.
Yeah, I think it's good to talk about that, because I think people may underestimate grief could show up in that form, around the loss of a job, or a change in a career, or the dissolution of a marriage, right? Or the loss of money, even, right? There's lots of different.
Or if you have a major surgery, that can trigger it too, because the person that you kind of knew, you've lost that version of yourself. Or even a friendship that dissolves, right? So what do you think some common myths or misunderstandings about grief are that would be good for people to understand? I think that I don't know that it's a misunderstanding about grief, but it's a misunderstanding about how we tend to move through hard things, that we tend to move through hard things frequently by powering through, or just staying busy, or trying to just push down or push to the side the uncomfortable feeling that we're having. But grief can be, depending on how large of a kind of dose of grief you have, it's pretty pervasive and you can't escape it. So I think that it's a misunderstanding that you can just kind of ignore it and then it will go away, or that you can power through it, or you can pretend it's not happening. It really has to be tended to. Otherwise, it's like can be more disruptive or disruptive for longer.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece to bring a spotlight to. Because I think, the tendency, or I'll speak for myself, my tendency might be to like try to distract myself with other things, so I don't feel it or have to think about it. And so, but eventually you run out of distractions, or it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, like trying to this big snowball that you're running from, right? Trying to distract yourself. That might work for a little bit, but eventually it catches up with you.
Yeah.
And I also like what you said, powering through it. That might be someone else's go-to, like, I'll get through this. And
not that you don't have to have like a day where you have to power through something, or that you might get lovely, there might be a lovely distraction because you can't necessarily be in that dark place 24/7. Or you would rather not be.
Right. And I think it is hard to power through something when you don't know what to expect. Yeah. Because it's just going to show up, and then you have to deal with it, right? Yeah. That's really good. So lots of lots of surprising things about grief, but like you said, it's something you have to go through. You can't jump over it, go around it. You have to go through it, and it can be really uncomfortable,
really painful.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit, how can unresolved or suppressed grief affect somebody? If there is a person who's just like trying to avoid it, right, or not deal with it, not look at it, how can that affect us emotionally and or physically?
Yeah, well, there's something called like complicated grief, which means normal grief, medically speaking, we tend to think that happens for about 6 months, where people can be kind of in the thick of grieving for someone that they lost, or something that they lost. And so when people don't deal with it, it either can go on longer than that, and then it could potentially turn into more of a mood disorder like depression or anxiety or something like that. And so that's like the biggest thing, is that if you don't deal with it, it's just going to take longer, and then if you are suffering from depression, 6 months later, and it's ongoing, then that obviously can affect your job, your relationships, your health, and how you're taking care of yourself. So I think that would be something, and I would say that really, even if you deal with it in a healthy way, you still will have those like anniversary hard times. But if you've suppressed it, those are obviously going to be worse. Say you try not to think about it, but like Christmas is coming, it's going to come up, and so it is something that I think a lot of people want to avoid. And I personally haven't ever had like this most massive grief, like losing a child or losing a partner. And I can't imagine. I would want to escape at times,
Yeah, for sure. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, but then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some ways to deal or navigate with grief. So stick around for that. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. So glad you're here. We're talking with Amy Ellingson today, and we're talking about the topic of grief, the surprising things about grief, and now we want to talk about how does somebody deal with it in a healthy manner if they're feeling like they're stuck in it, like they're kind of going through the motions, but they're not really experiencing any healing. Well, what's your take on that, and what would you recommend?
Well, I would even change the question a little bit, just like how do you deal with grief in general, right? I think that because it can be so powerful, it can be kind of scary. It would feel like a tsunami or something in your body, and that is a scary feeling. So I think that I think that it's the first thing is maybe to acknowledge that you're grieving, that's what's there. And I heard this one expression that, grieving is an expression of love, so it's your way of still loving this thing or person that is no longer there. So that amount of love, it's going to be expressed in grief. So I think that accepting that is where you are and that there isn't necessarily a shortcut is one of the first steps. I think that then talking to somebody is really helpful, whether, I have lots of people in my practice that report to me they don't really have anyone to talk to, or they don't want want to burden anybody. That person's busy. But I do think there needs to, when you need somebody, that is the time we call on family and friends. So I think sometimes, and what I tell patients to do, what I suggest is that they just tell somebody, hey, listen, I just need to get this out of my head. I'm not looking for any advice. So can you just listen? It just would feel really good to get this out of my head. Because a lot of people also don't talk to people because that person tries to fix them, or they want to go, help. And that's not really what you're looking for. You're not looking for help. You're looking for the ability to get it out of your head.
Right. You're looking for an opportunity to express and to kind of relieve some of that.
So I just suggest that people just ask for that up front. Just like, I'm just looking to get this out of my head. Just so can we not talk about any solutions? Like, I'm not looking for any help.
And I want to pause there for a second, because that might happen on a daily basis, especially at first when you're dealing with it, right? Yeah. You might have this need or compulsion or desire to get it out of your head every day. And
that's another time where you can journal. I know some people actually leave voicemails for the person that has passed away. We saw one documentary where there was a telephone booth.
Oh yeah, in Japan.
In Japan, and people after the tsunami, and people use the telephone booth to call. So I think any way where you can kind of express that, whether that's in art, the other thing about moving your body, go for a walk, put some music on, trying to express that emotion that's inside of you. And I think it's, some people do need therapy, they want therapy. There are grief counselors. You can actually seek out someone to help you move through grief. I think that grief can be a little bit more complicated when it's obviously very hard when you love someone and you have this beautiful relationship, but it's also really hard when you have any estrangement with that person, or say it's like a parent or a child and you aren't on good terms when they pass away. That actually can make the grief really tricky.
Yeah.
Because there's just layers of feeling guilty, and so that one can be really hard, and I think that sometimes counseling is needed to work through that.
Yeah. And how about, would you recommend like moving your body, being active at all? Yeah,
I think, walking and again, dancing, moving your body there can be this energy, this sense of like, gosh, I don't know what to do with my body, and that can be like an agitation, and moving is great. I think some people can feel kind of a lethargic sense in their grief, and maybe moving doesn't feel good. So I think the best thing, it's a good time to just get in tune with what feels good.
Yeah. And lots of ways to do that. Also, I remember there was a time before I had my neck surgery and I was in a lot of discomfort, I was listening to this one meditation, and one of the things that this guided meditation had me do was to ask, like, what's the message of this discomfort? And I read that somewhere it said, like, if you're grieving, like, what's the message of your grief? Yeah. And I thought that was a cool take as well, because again, it can feel surprising. Yeah. You can feel out of control. So to pause and to just ask, like, hey, what's the message here? It might help a person get centered, or it might stimulate a different conversation internally or even externally, right? Yeah. I think it's very helpful to ask that, because what could be the message of your grief?
Yeah, I mean, what would come to me is like the message would be how much you loved the person and how beautiful your relationship what you had. Or it could be, I feel so disappointed that I never called them back, or I am so angry with myself that I let a year go by and we haven't spoken. So I do think it's a clarifying question to maybe figure out what's going on for you, and I think it's that's a powerful question to ask.
Yeah, so you can move your body, you can ask questions, you can journal, you can talk to somebody, you can get some professional help. And I remember when my mom passed, I was out in the gardens at the community garden, and I would talk with her just aloud. And there was something about talking aloud that it was different than just talking in my head. And I'm not sure exactly what that is, but there was a difference there. And I would just tell her what I was doing. And I would even tell her I'm just watering the zinnias now, and these zinnias make me think of the zinnias you used to plant, and I would just have that conversation. And there was something very soothing about that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, if you can, is just to honor what comes to you. And so I think people try to be normal. They think that lots of people are talking to people who have died out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very common thing. And I think it's really healthy.
I think it's really healthy, and it feels weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like unnatural, like out of the norm. But
I think lots of people do it.
I think lots of people do it. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So I think it's not weird.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about resources, I do think that for people who like to read, like myself, and there's all kinds of books out there. There's all kinds of workbooks. You know, there's ways to kind of work through looking at stages of grief. What I was looking online. There's a book called It's Okay Not to Be Okay, and it's a book about grief. And I personally haven't read these books, but then she has a website called refugeingrief.com. It looks like there are some like online courses, there's some groups. We used to have some active grief, like bereavement groups in our area, and we really don't right now. But I think like when I just looked it up online, Facebook has some groups you can join where that can be helpful. If there's a specific thing like a parent who has lost a child, there are some groups specifically for that. So I think reaching out. I mean, the biggest thing is connection is healing, or the right kind of connection can be healing. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, we're a pretty independent culture, and we somehow think we can do things all by ourselves when we really can't. And I would say grieving is the same thing. You want to like lean on people, share, be authentic, be vulnerable, even though it's a really hard time.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a challenging time, and it can be messy. Like you might look messy. Yeah. And that's okay. It's a time to like extend some self-compassion to yourself, some kindness to yourself, and like and just let people know like I'm feeling messy right now, and it's okay. Yeah,
and I think that it lasts like normal grieving is 6 months, like normal, and that's a long time. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be bad the whole time, but it's going to mean that you might be at the store and something happens and you start crying. Mm-hmm. Unexpectedly, and you haven't cried in like a week. And I think the other message that I've heard from people is grieving is not necessarily something that ever ends. It just becomes less intense. Mm-hmm. So like especially you're always going to grieve the loss of that person or that thing potentially, but it just is going to become less painful and less disruptive and intrusive.
Yeah, and it might even feel good sometimes. Down the road to like have those feelings. I'll just say real quick. One last thing one thing we do in our household is around the holidays we put out the photos of people who have passed, and we light candles and say their names out loud. And that's a really feel-good practice.
Yeah, it's our little altar that we do, and it does feel good to acknowledge them, to keep their memory alive, and just have a minute to kind of sit with them.
Yeah. All right, well, great. Good stuff. Thanks for your contribution today. I appreciate it. All right, it's time for you now to get out there, be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You do have something to offer this world, and I believe in you.